Hey guys, welcome to Life and Style with Francyne. I am your host, Francyne Walker, and joining me today is Lekan Oguntoyinbo. Did I say
Oguntoyinbo.
Oguntoyinbo?
Oguntoyinbo. It's not.
Okay.
It's not an easy name, so.
But I hate to chop up people's names. That's for sure. Let's see here. We've got a lot to talk about. It has been a minute since the book was published, and we want to get started on the book. Talk a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll get into the book.
Okay, so my name, as you know, is Lekan Oguntoyinbo, and I started out my career as a reporter back in the late 1980s after graduate school. I worked at several major daily newspapers. I worked at the Tampa Tribune, which is now dead. And I went from there to the Cleveland Plain Dealer.
Okay.
And went from there to the Detroit Free Press. I was at the Detroit Free Press for 5 years. I left the newspaper business in 2000, but I've always kept a foot in the business.
Sure.
Either as writing for magazines, like I used to write for African American Family Magazine. I don't know if you remember that publication.
Yeah, I do.
It was being edited by Denise Crittenden at the time. And, some of the other local publications in the area. I wrote for some national outlets. But to earn my living, I've done two things in the last 20 years. I've either worked in public relations, or I've been a university professor. I was a full-time tenure-track university professor for 1 year at Lincoln University in Missouri. And then I was also a full-time tenure-track professor at a university in the upper Midwest in South Dakota for 2 years.
Okay.
I freelanced for several years, and then when my account started drying up, I went back to getting a 9-to-5.
Okay.
And I currently work as a communications director, executive public relations director for a large nonprofit in Dallas, in South Dallas.
Oh, okay.
And I've been in Dallas now for 5 years.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to do a book. I wrote this book I started working on this book back in 2016 and had it published in 2018. I like to tell people up front that even though the book is about Muslims, I'm not a Muslim.
Okay.
I'm a Christian. I was born into a Baptist household. I went to Catholic schools.
Okay.
And when I first came to this country, I'm originally from Nigeria. I was born in the United Kingdom. I was born in England, but I grew up in Nigeria. I came as a college student when I was 17. And for as long as when I first came to this country, I was involved with a non-denominational group called the Churches of Christ. But ever since I moved to Detroit, I've gone with other groups, other non-denominational groups. But so I'm not a Muslim. But I wrote this book because I think it's important to tell stories about what really makes America great.
Sure.
I remember this was back in 1998, I believe, or it may have been in 97. I was covering the National Convention of the NAACP in Pittsburgh for the Detroit Free Press. Bill Clinton, President Clinton at the time, was the keynote speaker. And he said, I don't remember what else he said, but there was something he said that stuck in my head ever since. And he said that America is the world's greatest and most powerful country, not in spite of its diversity, but because of it. And so the United States would not be the kind of country that it is right now, were it not for the land and the resources that were forcibly taken from the Native Americans, where the free labor that was provided by Africans, forcibly brought over here, propelled this country into its current position as the world's wealthiest country. America has been the world's wealthiest country for 140 years, and that's because of the labor and sweat of Black people. And then there's so many other groups that have contributed things, Asian Americans, Americans of the Hindu faith, American Jews, American Muslims. I mean, I could go on. I mean, just so many, immigrants from Africa. By immigrants, I mean those who've come in the last especially those who have come in the last 30 or 40 years. But everybody's contributed.
Sure.
And not for all of these people, this country would not be the world's wealthiest and most powerful country. And I think more people need to recognize that. I think it will make us a better people. So that's why I wrote the book.
So you're not Muslim?
I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
So
I've been in a mosque. I've been in a mosque once in my life.
Really?
And I was in, after 2001. I was working as director of communications for the Michigan Department of Civil Rights.
Okay.
And they asked me to go represent them at some event where I had a small speaking role.
Okay.
And, but no, I'm not Muslim.
Now, let's talk about that, because I think some people confuse what Muslim means. Some people confuse it with race. And I know that's partly ignorance. What is a Muslim actually?
Well, one of the things I learned when I was in elementary school, they taught us a little bit about in our social studies classes. They taught us a little bit about the Muslim faith.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember is that from that is that there are basically there are a few pillars of the Islamic faith, right? One of those pillars is that you must, if you can afford it, right, you must perform Hajj once in your life. In other words, you must go to Mecca. Another trait is that you must follow another pillar is, following the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, you see. Mm-hmm. And, the Islamic faith has a lot of similarities as the Christian faith and the Jewish faith.
Sure.
And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is, as you know, all three of those faiths trace much of the history to Abraham. So they're all known as the Abrahamic religions. There are differences, but there are a lot of similarities. For instance, with us Christians, charity and compassion and good works are important. Well, that, as you know, that's also very important to Muslims as well, and also very important to Jews. So there's some similarities. It doesn't mean they're the same religion, and Islam also teaches certain practices.
Sure.
There's some that most of us are familiar with, like some of the dietary practices.
Mm-hmm.
The kinds of things you should eat and don't eat. Prayers is something that's common in the Islamic faith. You pray so many times a day. I think it's 5 times a day. Going to the mosque on Fridays. So you've got these practices. I think one thing a lot of people don't know is that the Islamic faith is incredibly diverse. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you've got Sunnis, you've got Shias, but you also have other types of sects within that. Okay, so it's not, maybe you don't have thousands and thousands of denominations like you have with Christians.
Yeah.
Right? But it's still a pretty diverse faith. It's
sure.
Yeah. So
it's really a faith and not a race. It's really someone who practices the faith or religion and not so much a race, correct?
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to understand that about the Jewish faith as well. The Jewish faith is not an ethnicity. It's not a race. There's some Jews who are black, like those who came from Ethiopia, right? They were airlifted in the 80s. There's some Jews who have brown skin, or there's some Jews who are from places like Yemen, and they look like, what we consider to be Arabs. And then there's some who have very white, very pale skin, especially those who have European ancestry. It was the same thing in the Muslim faith, right? In the Muslim faith, you have Muslims who are black. You have Muslims who have very light skin, particularly if you go like some of the European Muslims from places like Albania, let's say, or places or parts of Lebanon.
Sure.
The skin is very, very light. And then you've got some who are like from the Middle East, who the skin tones are very different. So the Islamic faith is not a race; it's a religion. It's like any other thing.
That's important to distinguish, because I think a lot of times people associate Muslims with a race or an ethnicity, and do you think that contributes to some of the hatred or racism towards people who are Muslim or practice the Islamic faith?
Well, I think a lot of the racism and hatred stems from the fact that in this country Muslims are a minority, and this is a country that was built on racial hatred. It was built on white supremacy. It was baked into our DNA, and so even though overall the United States is a very welcoming country, well, you still have large pockets of the United States that despise differences.
Sure.
Differences be racial or ethnic or religious, so that's part of it. Now, let me say something to that. We've had lots of instances in this country in which Sikhs, the majority of whom are from India, have been confused with Muslims because in the Sikh faith, the men wear turbans.
Yeah, the S-I-K-H.
Just like in the Muslim faith. I'm sorry?
S-I-K-H?
Like,
S-I-K-H?
Oh, yeah, Sikhs, yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, and the turbans, the way you can tell is that the turbans have a little knot at the top.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So, and another thing they do is, another thing that the men do is they carry knives. That's part of their religion. It's not for violence or anything like that. So a lot of people can't tell the difference between a turban worn by a Muslim man and a turban worn by a Sikh man. And there have been lots of instances in which Sikhs have been beaten up. Now, it's easy to say, well, that's just ignorance. But that's not completely true. We had an instance in this country, this was back, I think, in 1912, in which, I forget in what state in this country, but the Sikhs got run out.
Mm-hmm.
The Sikhs got run out. There wasn't a lot of prejudice against Muslims. So I think a lot of the prejudice against Muslims stems from two things. One stems from ignorance, right? And the other stems from the fact that the overwhelming majority of Muslims are people of color. The overwhelming majority of Muslims in this country are people of color.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're Black, they're Asian, they're Middle Eastern, they're very few. There's some white Muslims, but not that many. You see, it's not as many as you
Sure.
think.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it as well. And I think it's also important for people to remember. I think when most people think about Muslims, their mind immediately goes to the Middle East, right? Which is understandable because that religion began in what we now know today as Saudi Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people forget, right, is that most Muslims don't live in the Middle East. The largest Muslim country on the planet is Indonesia. The second largest country on the planet, if you look at the big five countries, the big five Muslim countries, Indonesia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Nigeria, not a single one of those countries is in the Middle East. You see, so a lot of people forget that. Most Muslims live outside of the Middle East. And so I think those are critically important things to remember. I think it's also important to remember that when this faith first began, back in the 7th century, many of Muhammad's first lieutenants, many of his closest associates were Africans.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, from places like Ethiopia. So Africa has played a critical role in the three Abrahamic faiths, in Christianity, in Islam, and also in Judaism. It's played a critically important role.
How did you narrow it down to, what was the criteria for the 50 Muslims that were included in the book? How did you narrow it down to 50?
Yeah, so initially I was thinking about doing 100. So a friend of mine who was working on a book at the time as well said, wow, 100, that's too much.
Yeah.
So I narrowed it down to 50. And then another friend said to me, well, 50 is still a lot. You should really do 25. And to be honest with you, in retrospect, I really wish I'd done 25. Yeah, and done 25 longer pieces. But, as far as criteria, what I wanted to do was I wanted to profile characters who are doing stuff that's so amazing, it will shock you.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
Okay, I had no idea. So, and I wanted to go beyond, stating the obvious. And I also, in the book, for each chapter of the book, I have an introductory essay, and in each introduction, I talk about some other things that Muslims have done historically in this country. Whether it's a guy who came up with a design for solidifying high rises, making them more stable, or whether it's the guy who came up with the idea of the ice cream cone, or whether it's just all kinds of people.
Yeah.
I wanted to find 50 characters in a dozen different walks of life that would just, stun people. It's like, wow, okay. And the whole idea was that, okay, enough people read this book and they'll begin to get the idea that, yeah, it really does take all kinds to make this country great. Not just a certain kind of people, not just people from Norway.
Yeah. Well, one name I do recognize was Mahershala Ali.
Okay, yes, of course.
Among many, as I was looking through, like, oh man! But I knew that. And who are some others that we might recognize from the book?
Well, of course, it's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but I chose not to put him in the sports.
Because he's so much bigger than that.
He's so much bigger than that,
Yeah.
So the last quarter of a century reinventing himself.
Yeah. Very philanthropic, very much activist.
Yeah. So he's an activist, he's a filmmaker, he's a historian.
Yeah.
He's written all kinds of nonfiction books. He has been, basically a cultural ambassador for the United States.
Sure.
He's so much bigger than basketball. So, and that's big because Kareem is one of the greatest there ever was. So yeah. So,
and for him to, it says something about him that he did not allow, like that was one phase of greatness for him.
Right.
He allowed that, or he actually took his notoriety and built a new platform to enact change in the world. So that says a lot about him, that he was just great on court and as great off court.
Yes. Someone would argue that he's greater off the court.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I think he's just an amazing guy.
Yeah. So that definitely was a smart choice out of the 50 that you chose. I don't know. I think 25 may have been too. Well, you said you were going to do longer pieces. So how long? So who are some other people that we might recognize?
Well, I think another one is a native Detroiter by the name of Keith Ellison.
Oh wow! Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So. How timely! I know we had talked about doing this interview 2 years ago when the book first came out. So when I approached you again to keep my word, I remembered this is timely. This book is timely, even though you wrote it in 2018 or published it in 2018. It's still so timely with everything going on.
Right.
We know why it's timely with Keith Ellison, what's going on with the police brutality.
George Floyd. Yeah. So.
Oh God. And so Keith, we recognize Keith Ellison.
Yeah. And I have to say that I was disappointed when Keith Ellison announced he was stepping down from Congress, because I thought, wow, we're losing a key voice. And if he becomes Attorney General, his profile, Attorney General of a state in the Midwest, his profile will diminish. But that hasn't happened. Actually, his profile is still high.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's good that he chose to do something else, because he paved the way for another talented, up and coming, feisty congresswoman by the name of Ilhan Omar, who's also profiled. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Yeah.
and Ilan Omar and
She
Rashida.
just lost her father she just lost her father, I believe, the beginning of the week or last week.
Ilan Omar?
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, she did. But she has been the center of a lot of hate.
Yes, she has. Yes, she has. She has. And my feeling about Ilan Omar is that even if she wasn't Muslim, she'd still be a target. Because when you think about it, Ayanna Pressley isn't Muslim. I
didn't know that.
Yeah, Ayanna Pressley, she's not Muslim. From Massachusetts. Yeah. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez isn't Muslim. But
Ayanna Pressley is not Muslim.
No, she's not. She's not.
Yeah. So it really they're targets because they're brown and black women.
Yeah, and because they speak their minds. And we take up for
yeah.
and Rashida Tlaib is another one that's profiled in the book, and she too, she hasn't. I don't think she's quite been the target that the kind of target that Ilan Omar has been, but she's been a target too.
Sure.
Yeah. So you've got this kind of thing going on, but this is just amazing. Amazing women. One thing I wanted to do in this book was to try to, I didn't sit down and come up with a quota and say, I'm going to have so many women in the book and so many men. But I was determined to make sure that women's voices were well represented in the book, because I think one of the stereotypes of the Muslim faith, right, is that, women are shoved to the background. And I think that's ironic. Bangladesh is one of the world's largest Muslim countries, and they've had a female prime minister.
Wow.
Pakistan is one of the world's 5 largest Muslim countries, and they've had a female prime minister, as you know, Benazir Bhutto. Turkey is a predominantly Muslim country, and they also have had a female head of state. So I wanted to be able to, to showcase and help people understand that. Well, it's. I guess the goal is always the kind of thing we do, Francyne. The goal is always to educate.
Yes.
Yeah, and illuminate and broaden minds. Yeah. I do think, unfortunately, we're at a point in this society where facts don't matter. But I still think we still need to continue to teach people and educate people.
Lekan, do you think the facts don't matter, or that pervasive way of thinking that facts don't matter is attributed to the climate that we're in and the leadership that we're under, where everything has been labeled fake news? Right. So what happens, the public tends to scatter about because they don't know what to believe. So then anything is labeled fake when indeed it is fact. So do you think that has happened as a result of the administration we've been under?
I think the administration we're a part of right now is a part of it. But, everybody always talks about how, well, under this administration, we're seeing more hate and all that. Actually, we started seeing a lot more hate when Obama was president. You started seeing more hate groups go up, because a lot of people couldn't deal with the idea of this all-American guy, highly intelligent, athletic, beautiful family, smart. I mean, the guy was practically flawless. The biggest scandal in his presidency was the fact that he showed up one day in the White House press room dressed in a tan suit. Yeah, that was the biggest scandal of his administration. So I think that was difficult for a lot of people. But I think in addition to that, what we've had in the last 20 or 25 years, especially with the deregulation that began under the Reagan administration, is it used to be once upon a time, right? As you know, Francyne, that equal time was a big thing with broadcasters, right? That's practically non-existent thanks to deregulation. And so what that did was it made it easier for a lot of these conservative talk shows to move into place,
Yeah.
to begin to, just put out things that really are very impactful. They shape minds, even if they're fake, even if they're incendiary.
Yeah.
Yes, and people wholeheartedly believe them. And so it's pushed us into that, combined with what we're seeing now with the current, White House occupant, I think has pushed us to a point where, facts really don't matter. So if I tell you that you should put on your mask to help prevent, so you don't get sick, right? And you come back and tell me that it's a lie, it doesn't concern me and it shouldn't concern you, and you're violating my rights. If I tell you that, look, we've got evidence all around the world that we need to take better care of our climate because we've got some problems here. You've got the evidence that's staring you in the face.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 9,000 cases uptick in Florida.
Yeah. Of course.
Staring us in the face.
Yeah.
And you want to argue that wearing a mask is a violation of your rights.
Yeah. So, I saw a video clip the other day from this was out of Palm Beach County in Florida, and people were speaking on a public hearing, a county commission public hearing, about masks, and they were talking about how people were talking about how masks kill people. Yeah, exactly. So that's
oh my God.
Yeah, that's where we are.
I gotta laugh to keep from crying. I mean, just the ignorance.
Yeah,
I mean, Michigan was hit hard, and we got a lot of. I don't know if you've seen any of. We had the militiamen. That's what I call them. Storm Capitol.
About that, yeah.
Armed and
armed to the teeth
for a haircut. Or just the fact. Armed because they want to get a haircut. They don't want to wear masks. They didn't want to abide by anything.
Right.
However, if she had been pressured, Governor Whitmer had been pressured to do something different, we might have seen a different outcome. Although we did experience some death and a lot of cases. I mean, it was every week or every day. Right. I saw people that were local passing away, and I was there was incentive enough for me to stay home.
Oh yeah, of course.
And wear a mask when I go out.
Yeah.
Because that could be me, or someone else could cause something for me, cause my demise, or I could cause their demise.
Of course.
I mean, that's 1 + 1 = 2. So, but 9,000 in Florida.
Yeah.
Not due to protests. Not due to Black Lives Matter, not due to anything other than they opened too soon. They opened too soon.
And same thing here in Texas, same thing in Arizona, same thing in especially many states in the South.
Yes, mainly South.
Yeah,
mainly South.
Yeah.
So, but someone was saying, well, this is. Why did we stay home for 90 days? This was the whole point, to flatten the curve.
Right.
And, you go out, it's like just American exceptionalism is just, but I think that also contributes to the fact that fact is disregarded. We believe what we want to believe, even as it relates to Muslims, even despite the amount of accomplishments that were covered, or the people that were covered in the book and beyond, because you had 100. So if you had 100, God knows there's 1,000.
Of course.
And but that's with any faith or race, ethnicity, that is a minority.
Yes.
Where it doesn't matter our accomplishments. It doesn't matter the things that we have done, even with the bricks that were thrown at us, that we continue to build. It doesn't matter. I think it just seems to me that people are still going to believe what they want to believe.
Yeah.
And their perception is going to remain the same, and their prejudice is going to be intact. Would you agree?
No, no, I have to agree. I think when people decide that sometimes people make up their minds, and when they make up their minds, it means they're closed.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't care what the facts say. It means you're closed, you know.
Yeah.
And that's and to be honest with you, that's why I don't believe in diversity training. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. I'm not a fan of diversity training. I've been a part of it a couple of times, and I usually frown because my thing is, you know, a bigot is going to be a bigot.
You actually have a point, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask your opinion. I feel like this is my stance. I'm not having circular conversations with people who are not Black about racism.
Right.
I find, and just watching the acts come forward, you know, people are just showing themselves to be who they are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They're showing themselves to be who they are. And I said, this is the reason why corporations really don't want to tackle this in the workplace, because of what you're saying. Bigots are bigots.
Oh, yeah.
And so to really tackle diversity, inclusion, and in the workplace is more than a notion. I mean, it's going to take more than pizza. It's going to take more than
it's going to take more than a 1 day retreat or a day and a half retreat. You know, so it's not that simple as saying, well, just throw everybody in a room and let's.
Because it's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable, and you know, sometimes people just don't want their minds changed.
They don't want to believe that they're not better.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah.
That's my stance. I said I'm not having circular conversations with people who, first of all, don't want to believe that my humanity, my existence on this earth matters, and that they're better than me.
Right.
There is no changing.
Or who resent the fact that I'm on this planet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, I'm hopeful for a number of reasons, but then I'm also realistic, you know, about people and where they are. But, you know, we can still celebrate, as you've done in this book, we can still celebrate the accomplishments of Muslims. I noticed you said American Muslims. Was that what you only included?
I only focused on American Muslims because I wanted to make this a book about America.
Yeah.
You know, so, but clearly if we wanted to do something global, I mean, yeah, we could go all kinds of ways on that.
That would be more than 100, right?
Yeah, a lot more. You know. So.
Now, where can we find the book?
It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only place where it's available right now. It's available in two forms. One is the hard copy, which is the a softback form, and of course the electronic form. So I should have put it on more platforms, but I'm a one-man band.
So do you plan on writing anything else, Lekan?
Well, I'm considering the possibility of updating the book. That's number one.
Okay.
And number two, I have another project that I want to start working on. I know you and I were talking prior to this interview, and you said a couple of things that lit a light bulb in my head. And we'll probably talk more about this offline at some point. But I want to work on a project, probably more of a blog that will incorporate different types of elements in it, kind of like what you have right now. Sure. And this will be focused on African immigrants.
Nice.
Yeah. This will focus on African immigrants because, as you probably know, the number of Africans who have come here as immigrants since 1980, right? is more than the number of our ancestors who were brought here as slaves over a 200-year period.
Wow.
So a lot of Africans have come here. It's a very diverse group, as you can imagine, because Africa is a very diverse continent. The Nigerians, of course, are the biggest, only because Nigeria is the biggest country on the continent. But you've got Ethiopians, you've got Cape Verdeans, you've got Cameroonians, Kenyans, so many Egyptians, so many. So, and just like the Muslims we're talking about, they're making amazing contributions in all types of areas.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, in academia, in business, in science and technology, I don't even want to get into sports and entertainment.
Oh God!
Yes.
Entertainment, man. Let me tell you, Netflix.
Well, yeah.
Going up and out for Nollywood.
Yes. Well, yeah. Nollywood is huge, but even beyond Nollywood, the African immigrants or children of African immigrants who are big players in Hollywood.
Yes.
People like David Oyelowo, for instance, who's huge, or Idris Elba. Idris Elba is a descendant of immigrants from Sierra Leone. Of course, now he's British, but he divides his time between the UK and the US. Yeah. So
how does that happen? He's British, but he's a descendant from Sierra Leone. How does that?
Okay, so what happened back in those days was a lot of our parents, like my parents, for instance, because there were so few opportunities for post-secondary education.
Yes.
In Africa, there were very few. Until 1960, there was only one university in all of Nigeria. So if you wanted to become a lawyer, you wanted to become an engineer, you wanted to become a physician, well, chances are there were very few spots open at the one university in the country. So chances are, you went abroad. For most people, for most Africans, that meant the UK or France or one of the other colonial countries. For a few, it meant Canada or the United States.
That
makes sense. In my case, my parents went to school in the UK. That's where they were married. And that's where they also had my brother and me.
Okay.
You see, and then when they were done with their education and had a little bit of money saved up, they moved back to Nigeria. Back then, most Africans did not go abroad, study, and stay. They went back home. Because back then, the African continent, there were opportunities. That began to change in the mid-'60s, and unfortunately, that change hasn't stopped.
How did you, now you were in Michigan for a time.
Yes, I was in Michigan from 1995, September, until 2008, May, when I left.
Okay. So you've been gone a minute then.
I've been gone a while. Yeah, I've been back a few times, but yeah, I actually considered moving back at one point. But after experiencing 5 years of no snow, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely an incentive.
Yeah, the huge.
I don't like the snow.
Yeah. So
I can have a whiteless Christmas.
Amen. Amen to that. If I ever see snow again,
I can give you a postcard.
Yeah, exactly. I can watch it on TV. Yeah. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it has been a pleasure.
Well, thank you so much, Francyne.
To talk to you finally, and learn so much more than I didn't. I that's what I love about the show is everyone I invite on teaches me something, because we all want to continue to learn and grow and expand and have an open mind.
Yes.
So the book is available on Amazon.com.
It is.
I Too Am America, Stories of 50 Amazing American Muslims. Right?
That's correct.
And it's available hardcover as well as Kindle.
Correct.
On Amazon. And so we can look for something else in the future.
Hopefully in the next year or two.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you for joining me and taking some time.
Thank you so much, Francyne, for having me. And next time I'm in Detroit, I'll definitely look you up.
Okay. Please do.
I will.
Take care.
Well, God bless you. Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Wow, what a great interview. The name of the book is I Too Am America, Stories of 50 American Muslims. It is available on Amazon. I just want to thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of Life and Style with Francyne. You can find us on YouTube. Just search Francyne Walker, or on Instagram at Francyne Walker TV, or on my Facebook page, Life and Style with Francyne. Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, I'll see you soon. Mwah.